At my sister's engagement party, my innocent 10-year-old daughter accidentally spilled red punch on her dress. My sister snapped and slapped her so hard she hit the ground crying in front of 230 guests. Before I could react, my parents did something even worse. But I warned them they'd regret it, and just 10 minutes later, I got a call from my dad, his voice shaking because, "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. I've been wanting to tell this story for some time now. It's not an easy one to tell, but it's an important one. It's a story about family. About the lines you think will never be crossed, and what happens when they are shattered in front of your very eyes. You think you know them. You think there's a boundary they'd never violate. But then you're standing in a room with 230 witnesses, watching it happen. It all started at my sister's engagement party. You know, life for me and my amazing daughter, Audrey, hasn't exactly been a fairy tale. 7 years ago, when Audrey was barely 3 years old with her hair in little pigtails that were always slightly crooked, her dad Roger just walked out. There was no big fight, no dramatic showdown. He just packed a single duffel bag, stood in the doorway of our little home, and said, with a chilling kind of calm, "I'm not ready for this, Lori. For parenthood." And just like that, he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, and in the silence that followed, it was just me and a confused toddler who kept asking when Daddy was coming home from the store. So, it's been me, Lorraine Williams, 41 years old, a single mom and a 4th grade teacher, figuring out how to be both the soft place to land and the firm hand to guide. My life became a carefully constructed juggling act of lesson plans, parent-teacher conferences, scraped knees, and bedtime stories. Every single day is this delicate balancing act, stretching my modest teacher's salary to give Audrey everything she needs. I became an expert at grocery store sales, a master of coupons. I remember standing in the cereal aisle once, doing mental math to see if we could afford the brand with the cartoon character on the front or if we had to stick with the generic kind in the big bag. It's the little things, you know? The tiny sacrifices you make that no one ever sees. But you know what? Despite all that, we built this beautiful life together. Our little 2-bedroom apartment, the one with the slightly creaky floorboards and the window that overlooks Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning roses, it became our sanctuary. Walking in after a long day at school, tired down to my bones, and being hit with the smell of crayons and whatever masterpiece Audrey was working on, that was home. The walls are a testament to her vibrant spirit, covered in her colorful artwork. There are paintings of misshapen cats, portraits of me where my head is a little too big for my body, and photos from our little adventures, a weekend at the beach where we got gloriously sunburned, a trip to the state fair where we spent too much money trying to win a giant stuffed unicorn, a simple picnic in the park with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We had our traditions. They were the anchors in our little world of two. Sunday mornings were for pancakes. The whole kitchen would get dusted in a fine layer of flour because Audrey, my official batter stirrer, always insisted on doing it with great enthusiasm. I'd be at the stove, flipping them, and she'd be sitting at the table, a little dot of batter on her nose, telling me about her dreams. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. And Friday nights were movie nights. We'd drag every pillow and blanket into the living room and build a fortress around the coffee table. One night, huddled under a big quilt watching some animated movie, Audrey, with her face serious and buttery from the popcorn, turned to me and said, "Mom, we have the best life, don't we?" Her voice was so full of conviction. And in that moment, with the glow of the TV on her face, I knew we did. It wasn't about what we had, but about who we were together. Our bond, it just grew stronger with every passing year, woven together with inside jokes, shared secrets, and the quiet understanding that we were a team. I wanted to give her stability, the kind her father had ripped away. I started a small college fund for her the year he left, putting away a little bit from each paycheck, dreaming of the day she'd walk across a graduation stage, confident and ready for the world. It wasn't much, but it was a promise. A promise that no matter what, her future would be bright. It was Lori and Audrey against the world, and honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way. My sister Brenda, though, she lived in a completely different reality. 2 years younger than me, she was always our parents' golden child. I don't say that with bitterness anymore, just as a fact. It was like we were two different plants in the same garden. She was the prized, delicate rose that got all the sun and special fertilizer, and I was the sturdy, reliable perennial in the corner that you could always count on but never really noticed. I got practical gifts for my birthday, a sensible coat, a new set of mixing bowls, and lectures on responsibility. Brenda got designer clothes and endless praise for her boundless ambition. I remember one Christmas so clearly it feels like it was yesterday. I was in my junior year of college, working 2 part-time jobs to pay my tuition and buy textbooks. My winter coat was thin and worn, and I'd circled a nice, warm, down-filled coat in a Sears catalog, the kind that would actually keep the biting Chicago wind out on my long walk to campus. That year, Brenda, who was still in high school, was obsessed with a particular designer handbag she'd seen in a magazine. It cost a fortune. Christmas morning came, the air filled with the smell of pine needles and my mom's coffee cake. I opened my gift, and there it was, the sensible, warm coat from the catalog. I was genuinely grateful, truly. But then Brenda opened her gift. The room filled with her theatrical squeals of delight as she pulled out the ridiculously expensive handbag. My parents just beamed at her, their faces glowing with pride. "Anything for our ambitious girl," my dad said, patting her on the back. "You've got to look the part to be successful." It wasn't that I didn't get what I needed, it was the difference in the joy behind the gift. Mine was a necessity, hers was a desire, a symbol of a life they wanted for her. When I struggled to pay for my state university education, working nights at a diner until my feet ached, our parents fully funded Brenda's elite private university without a second thought. After she graduated, she landed a prestigious marketing job through my dad's connections at his golf club, and her career just skyrocketed. Every family gathering, every holiday, became an unspoken competition I never signed up for. It was always Brenda's latest promotion versus my stable, modest teaching career. Her luxury downtown apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows versus my cozy, 2-bedroom rental. Her exotic vacations to Bali and Greece versus our weekend trips to the nearest state park beach. My parents never explicitly said they were disappointed in my choices, but their glowing pride in Brenda's achievements, it spoke volumes. I'd be telling a story about one of my students having a breakthrough in reading, and my mom would nod politely, her eyes already scanning the room for someone else to talk to, before turning the conversation to Brenda's latest successful marketing campaign. It was a constant, subtle reminder that in their eyes, I had chosen a smaller, less impressive life. One evening, I was over at their house for dinner. Brenda was out with friends. I was helping my mother with the dishes, the warm water and soap feeling comforting on my hands. She was quiet for a long time, then she said, her voice casual, "Your sister really knows how to select the right partner, doesn't she? Preston has such potential. His family is so well respected." She paused, scrubbing a plate a little too hard. "It's a shame things didn't work out with Roger after the divorce, Lori. I just worry about you. Maybe next time you'll choose someone with more stability, more ambition." The word stung, a sharp, familiar ache right under my ribs. As if my failed marriage was a poor choice I'd made, like picking the wrong brand of soup at the store, and not a painful abandonment that I had survived and clawed my way back from. I just gripped the sponge tighter and said nothing. There was nothing to say. Despite all this, I tried. For Audrey's sake, I really did. I wanted her to have some semblance of a normal, extended family. I wanted her to know her aunt and her grandparents, even if they viewed her mother as a cautionary tale. So, I learned to swallow the subtle jabs, the backhanded compliments that felt like tiny paper cuts. Comments like, "Audrey seems so attached to you. Don't you worry she's not independent enough?" Or when I'd show up to a family dinner in a new top from Kohl's, my mother would say, "Oh, that's practical, isn't it?" My personal favorite was the constant financial advice, "Have you considered a side job, Lori?" Single moms need to think about those college funds early, you know. As if I did anything else but think about it. So, when Brenda called 6 months ago, her voice bubbling with an excitement she usually reserved for a major sale at Saks, to announce her engagement to Preston Caldwell, I genuinely congratulated her. Preston was everything my parents had ever wanted in a son-in-law, the sole heir to the Caldwell development fortune, ambitious, polished, and from a family whose name was on half the buildings in the city. For a fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe being this happy, this secure, might soften some of Brenda's sharp edges. Maybe it would finally be enough for her, and she wouldn't need to feel superior to me anymore. And when she invited us to the engagement party, a real glimmer of hope sparked in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a turning point for our family. This is a very exclusive event, Lori, Brenda emphasized over the phone, her voice dropping into a tone that was both conspiratorial and condescending. Preston's family has invited several important business associates, even a state senator. It's very important that everything goes perfectly. Audrey will need to be on her absolute best behavior. Of course, I assured her, my teeth grinding slightly at the implication that my daughter was some kind of wild child. Audrey is so excited to celebrate with her aunt. The weeks leading up to the party were a whirlwind of preparation on my very limited budget. I spent an entire Saturday going through sale racks until I found a navy blue cocktail dress at Macy's. It was simple, elegant, and most importantly, 70% off. It was nothing compared to the designer outfits Brenda favored, but it made me feel put together. For Audrey, I found a beautiful, age-appropriate dress with delicate embroidered flowers on the skirt at a children's boutique. It was more than I should have spent, but when she tried it on and twirled in front of the mirror, her face lit up with such pure joy, I knew it was worth every penny. We spent a few evenings practicing our fancy party manners, turning it into a game. I'd lay out the silverware on the kitchen table. Okay, Madam Audrey, I'd say in a silly, fake British accent, which fork does one use for the salad appetizer? And she would giggle, her brow furrowed in concentration, before proudly picking up the correct one. We discussed appropriate conversation topics. If a grown-up asks you about school, what do you say? I say it's wonderful and my favorite subject is art, she'd recite perfectly. The morning of the party, a nervous energy buzzed in our little apartment. As I was brushing her long, brown hair, trying to get it into a perfect, sleek ponytail, I gave her one last gentle reminder. Remember, sweetie, this is a very important day for Aunt Brenda and Uncle Preston. There will be a lot of grown-ups talking about boring grown-up things. So, if you get bored, you just come find me and we'll take a little break, okay? She looked at my reflection in the mirror, her blue eyes, so much like her father's, a fact that still gave me a pang, wide with determination. I'll be super good, Mom. I promise. I won't embarrass you or Aunt Brenda. My heart clenched at her words. Embarrass me? I knelt down, turning her to face me, and smoothed her hair. Oh, sweetie, you could never, ever embarrass me. You are the best thing in my life. Just be your wonderful, kind self. That's all you ever have to be. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the faint, sweet smell of her shampoo. As we drove our 10-year-old Honda toward the exclusive Pine Hills Country Club, Audrey chattered excitedly about seeing her grandparents and the princess party her aunt was having. Her innocence was a little bubble of light, and I tried my best to stay inside it with her, pushing down the knot of anxiety that was tightening in my stomach. Perhaps today would be different. Perhaps my family would see me, see Audrey, and just be happy we were there. The sprawling, white-columned country club came into view, looking like something out of a magazine about the lives of the rich and famous. The parking lot was a sea of polished luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, even a few Bentleys gleaming in the afternoon sun. I pulled our faithful Honda into a spot at the far end of the lot, feeling like a little brown sparrow that had accidentally landed in a flock of peacocks. Wow, Audrey whispered, her face pressed against the window. It looks like a castle, Mom. It sure does, sweetie, I said, trying to sound cheerful. I took a deep breath, checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror one last time, and pasted on a bright smile. Ready for an adventure? She nodded eagerly, her eyes sparkling. If only I had known what awaited us inside those elegant doors. The moment we stepped through the grand entrance, the sheer opulence of the place was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, the floors were polished marble that reflected our images back at us, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of manicured gardens and a rolling golf course. The air smelled of money and expensive perfume. "Lori, you made it." Brenda's voice cut through the soft murmur of the crowd. It wasn't a warm greeting, it was an acknowledgement of an arrival. She approached us, a vision in a stunning white designer dress that I later found out was custom-made. Her diamond engagement ring, the size of a small ice cube, caught the light with every graceful, yet stiff, movement. "You're 15 minutes late." The traffic on the interstate was heavier than I expected, I explained, leaning in to kiss her cheek. It felt like kissing a marble statue. "Congratulations, Brenda. Everything looks absolutely beautiful." She accepted the kiss stiffly, her eyes already performing a critical scan of my outfit. "That dress is an interesting choice," she commented, her tone leaving no doubt as to her opinion. "Navy blue for a spring engagement." Before I could form a response, Audrey, ever the peacemaker, stepped forward, holding up the small, neatly wrapped gift bag we'd brought. We had spent an hour picking it out, a set of elegant, monogrammed champagne flutes. "Happy engagement, Aunt Brenda. We got you a present." Brenda glanced down at the bag, then at my daughter, as if just noticing her for the first time. "Thank you, Audrey," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "Put it on the gift table with the others." She gestured vaguely toward a distant table already piled high with elegant, expensive-looking packages. "Your grandparents are around here somewhere. And Preston's parents are eager to meet everyone, so do try to make a good impression." And with that, she turned on her heel to greet another, more important-looking guest, dismissing us as completely as if we were the waitstaff. Audrey's bright smile faltered for just a second, but she was a trooper. We found my parents near the bar, dressed to the nines in new, expensive-looking outfits. Their faces lit up for a moment, then settled into polite neutrality when they realized it was just us approaching. My mother gave me a quick, air-kiss hug before turning her full attention to Audrey, fussing over how tall she was getting and asking if she was eating enough vegetables. My father nodded at me curtly, then immediately launched into a speech about how I should be networking with Preston's father, the CEO of Caldwell Development. "Education is all well and good, Lori," he said, his voice low and urgent, "but with your situation, you should be thinking about more lucrative opportunities. A connection here could be very valuable." My situation. My life's work, my passion for teaching children, reduced to my situation. Just as my spirit was starting to sink, a warm voice broke through the chilly atmosphere. "What a lovely young lady you have here." A woman in a chic but understatedly elegant pantsuit smiled at us. "Those beautiful curls are natural, I assume?" "Yes, they are," I replied, surprised by her genuine kindness. "I'm Diane Sterling," she introduced herself. "Preston's aunt." She winked at Audrey and stage whispered, "Between you and me, the chocolate-covered strawberries over there are the best. Don't let the grown-ups eat them all." Audrey giggled, a real, happy sound. It was a brief moment of kindness in an otherwise cold reception, a small island of warmth in a sea of judgment that we were about to be swept away by. We found a relatively quiet corner by a large potted fern, which became our home base for the next hour. Audrey was content with her little plate of treats, and I sipped on sparkling water, having decided early on that alcohol would only complicate an already tense situation. I watched my family from afar. My parents were flitting from one important-looking group to another, laughing and charming. Brenda was the perfect hostess, gliding through the room on Preston's arm, her smile never faltering. They were a world away from us, even though we were in the same room. The formal part of the celebration began about an hour in. Preston and Brenda stood at the front of the ballroom while Preston's father, a formidable man with a booming voice, delivered a glowing toast about his son's many accomplishments and how Brenda was the perfect, polished, ambitious woman to stand by his side. He talked about the future of the Caldwell dynasty. He never once mentioned my parents by name, despite the fact they were standing right there, beaming as if he were praising them personally. Then Brenda took the microphone. Her voice was smooth and practiced, the one she used for her corporate presentations. She thanked everyone for coming to celebrate their special day. She thanked Preston's parents for their guidance, her colleagues for their support, and finally, our parents, for always pushing her to reach for the highest star. Throughout her entire speech, her eyes scanned the crowd of smiling faces, but they never once drifted to the corner where Audrey and I stood watching. We were invisible. A server circulated with trays of champagne for another toast. Audrey, who had been a model of perfect behavior, tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, may I please get some more of that red punch?" she whispered, pointing to her empty glass. "Of course, sweetie," I replied, grateful for a reason to move. "Let's go find the beverage table." We made our way carefully through the crowded room. The party was in full swing now, and the noise level had risen considerably. Audrey walked slowly, very conscious of navigating between the clusters of laughing adults. I watched her with a swell of pride. For a 10-year-old at a stuffy, overwhelming adult event, she was handling herself with remarkable poise. The punch bowl stood on a long table draped in white linen, surrounded by sparkling crystal glasses. It was a beautiful, deep crimson color. I helped Audrey fill a glass, the bright red liquid looking festive and innocent. "2 hands, okay?" "It's very crowded in here," I cautioned her again. "I will, Mom," she promised, her face a mask of intense concentration as she held the full glass with both small hands, her knuckles white. As we turned to head back to our quiet corner, it happened. It was so fast, so mundane, so utterly accidental. A large man in a gray suit, who was telling a loud story and gesturing animatedly with his arms, stepped backward without looking. His elbow caught Audrey's shoulder. It wasn't a hard shove, just a slight, careless bump, but it was enough to throw her 10-year-old body off balance. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion, like a scene from a movie where you're screaming at the screen but can't stop what's coming. The collision sent a violent ripple through the red punch. As Audrey stumbled sideways to catch her balance, the crimson liquid sloshed over the rim of the glass. It created a perfect, horrifying arc through the air, a streak of red against the backdrop of white and gold, before landing with startling, devastating precision directly on the pristine white silk of Brenda's custom designer dress. The splatter pattern bloomed across my sister's midsection like a gruesome flower, with smaller droplets spraying outwards. For one frozen, heart-stopping moment, the entire room fell silent. The background music suddenly seemed deafeningly loud. All conversation ceased. Every single eye in that ballroom turned toward us. Audrey regained her balance and looked up. Her expression shifted from confusion to absolute horror as she realized what she had done. The man who had bumped her, the catalyst for the whole disaster, had already moved on, completely oblivious to the chaos he had triggered. "I'm so sorry, Aunt Brenda," Audrey gasped, her voice small but carrying with perfect clarity in the unnatural quiet. "It was an accident." Brenda stared down at her ruined dress as if she couldn't comprehend what she was seeing. Her perfectly made-up face contorted, a rapid-fire series of emotions flickering across it, shock, disbelief, and then, settling like a storm cloud, a look of pure, unadulterated fury. Her eyes, so similar to mine in color but now holding none of their warmth, fixed on Audrey with an intensity that made my daughter physically shrink back against my legs. It wasn't just anger, it was contempt. "You little brat!" The words exploded from her, her voice unrecognizable, sharp and jagged with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Before I could move, before my brain could even process the speed of her fury, before I could throw myself between my sister and my child, Brenda's hand swung through the air. It was a blur of motion, of manicured nails and glittering diamonds. The crack of her palm against Audrey's cheek echoed like a gunshot in that silent, cavernous room. It was a sound I will never forget. It was sharp, ugly, and final. The force of the blow knocked my 10-year-old daughter, my 60-pound child, backward. Her small body lost its balance completely, crumpling to the floor as if her strings had been cut. The now empty punch glass rolled away from her hand, clinking softly as it came to a stop on the polished marble. Time seemed to fracture. For a split second, I was paralyzed, my mind refusing to process what my eyes had just witnessed. My sister, my own flesh and blood, had just struck my child with enough force to knock her to the ground. In front of 230 people. The angry red mark blooming on Audrey's pale cheek matched the stain on Brenda's dress with a horrific, sickening symmetry. Audrey was curled on the floor, one small hand pressed to her face, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. She wasn't wailing. She was just staring up at her aunt with a look of utter confusion and terror. That look in my daughter's eyes, the betrayal, the hurt, the sheer incomprehension of being physically harmed by someone who was supposed to love her, it was the thing that finally broke through the ice of my shock. A roar started in my ears. I lunged forward, dropping to my knees beside her, my expensive dress be damned. I gathered her trembling body into my arms, holding her so tightly I could feel her little heart hammering against my chest. "Are you okay?" "Let me see, sweetie," I whispered, my voice shaking with a rage so profound it felt like a physical illness. I gently moved her hand away from her face, revealing the clear, red outline of 4 fingers and a thumb already swelling on her delicate skin. Around us, the frozen tableau had erupted into chaos. I could hear audible gasps, a flurry of whispers. An older woman nearby kept muttering, "Oh my goodness, oh my goodness." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 younger men in the back with their phones raised, their screens glowing as they recorded the unfolding drama. Preston stood frozen near his parents, his mouth slightly agape, his expression caught somewhere between embarrassment and shock. But Brenda was not finished. "Look what she did to my dress," she shrieked, her voice rising to a near screech. She towered over us, a furious goddess in a stained white gown, gesturing wildly at the red splotch. "This is Vera Wang. It's custom-made. It's ruined." "She's a child," I bit out, my voice low and dangerous, a growl I didn't know I possessed. I helped to shaking Audrey to her feet, keeping her tucked safely behind me. "It was an accident." Just as I was about to unleash the torrent of furious words building in my chest, my parents pushed through the surrounding guests. My heart, ever the fool, gave a foolish little leap of hope that they were coming to check on their sobbing granddaughter, to stand up for her. But that hope died instantly, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. They didn't even glance at Audrey. They immediately flanked Brenda, forming a protective wall around their favored daughter. "Oh, Brenda, honey, what happened to your beautiful dress?" my mother exclaimed, her voice thick with exaggerated sympathy as she examined the stain as if it were a mortal wound. My father turned to me, his face a thunderous mask of disappointment, the look he had perfected over my lifetime. "Lori, this is exactly what happens when you're too permissive," he said, his voice carrying to the captivated audience. "Some occasions aren't appropriate for children, especially ones who haven't been taught proper behavior and discipline." The casual cruelty of his words, spoken right in front of my hurt, terrified child, sent a surge of protective rage through me that was so hot it felt cold. "Proper behavior?" I said, my voice dangerously even. My 10-year-old daughter was just physically assaulted by her aunt in front of this entire room. "And you're worried about a dress." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Lori," my mother dismissed with a flick of her manicured hand, not even looking at me. She was busy trying to dab at the stain with a cocktail napkin. It was barely a tap. Audrey is clearly overreacting, just like her mother always does. Crying for attention. I felt Audrey press herself against my side, her small body still shaking with silent sobs. The red mark on her cheek had darkened, the outline of fingers now unmistakable to anyone who cared to look. "Your sister's engagement party is ruined," my father continued, his voice rising, "because your clumsy daughter couldn't be careful. This is what happens when children are raised without proper discipline, without a strong father figure." At his words, something cold and clarifying washed over me. The pattern I had endured my entire life, the favoritism, the criticism, the emotional manipulation, it all snapped into crystal clear focus. They weren't just choosing Brenda over me. They were choosing a stained piece of fabric over the well-being of their own grandchild. And now, it wasn't just affecting me. It was threatening to scar my daughter. Preston's parents had joined the hostile circle now, his mother's face pinched with distaste. "Perhaps it would be best if you took your daughter home," she suggested, her voice smooth as silk but sharp as glass. "She seems upset, and we wouldn't want to further disrupt Brenda and Preston's special celebration." "Yes, Lori," Brenda added, finally looking at me, her eyes full of venom. "Take your brat and go. You've done enough damage for one day." But it was Brenda's next act, a moment of calculated cruelty so profound it took my breath away, that sealed her fate. She leaned down, bringing her face level with Audrey's, her voice dripping with a venomous sweetness. "You're just being dramatic like your mother, aren't you? Crying over nothing because you want attention." Then she delivered the final, cruelest blow, the one aimed not at me, but at the most vulnerable part of my daughter's heart. "That's probably why your daddy left, you know. He got tired of all the constant drama." I saw Audrey recoil as if she'd been physically struck again, her eyes wide with a fresh, deeper hurt that no apology could ever fix. And in that moment, watching my daughter's heart break under the weight of such a vicious attack, something inside me didn't just break, it hardened into diamond-sharp clarity. I had endured decades of their emotional abuse. I had swallowed their criticisms, accepted their conditional love. But I would not, could not, allow them to inflict that same soul-crushing damage on my daughter. The time for being the bigger person was over. With a perfect, chilling calm that I didn't know I possessed, I reached into my purse and took out my phone again. My hands weren't even shaking. "What are you doing now?" Brenda demanded, her voice laced with irritation, as if I were the one causing a scene. "Are you going to take a picture? It's a bit late for that." Without answering her, I unlocked the screen. My fingers moved with a life of their own, swift and sure. I bypassed my contacts, bypassed my camera. I opened the keypad and dialed 3 numbers, 911. And then, I pressed the small icon to put the call on speaker. A professional, disembodied voice filled the sudden, tense silence that had once again fallen over our little group. 911, what's your emergency?" The effect was instantaneous. It was as if a bomb had gone off, but a silent one. I held my sister's furious gaze, my voice clear and unwavering, projecting into the quiet room. "I need to report an assault on a minor," I stated. My 10-year-old daughter was slapped across the face by her aunt with enough force to knock her to the ground. "We're at the Pine Hills Country Club on Lakeview Drive." The dispatcher, calm and professional, asked, "Is the child injured?" "Yes," I said, never breaking eye contact with Brenda. "She has a visible handprint on her face and may have bruising." My mother lunged for the phone, her face a mask of horror and fury. "Lorraine, hang up that phone immediately," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "You are destroying this family over nothing." I simply stepped back, keeping the phone out of her reach. "Are you in immediate danger? Is the person who assaulted her still present?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes, she's still here. We're currently surrounded by family members who are pressuring us to leave and forget the incident happened." "Officers are being dispatched to your location," the dispatcher continued, her voice a calm anchor in our personal storm. "Please stay on the line until they arrive." Brenda's face, which had been flushed with rage, had drained of all color, leaving her looking pale and shrewish. "You called the police on me?" she whispered, the words filled with disbelief. "You called the police on your own sister? At my engagement party?" "Actions have consequences, Brenda," I replied simply. My father stepped forward then, getting right in my face. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "If you don't end this call right now, you are no longer a part of this family. Do you understand me? You will be cut off completely. We will see how you manage with just your teacher's salary then." We could even talk to a lawyer about your custody arrangement, see if a judge thinks this kind of drama is a stable environment for Audrey. For the first time in my life, his threats, even the terrifying one about Audrey, held no power over me. They were just the desperate words of a bully who was losing control. I had already made my choice the moment Brenda's hand struck my daughter's face. Audrey, who had been pressed silently against my side this whole time, looked up at me, her eyes a mixture of awe and apprehension. She whispered, so quietly I could barely hear her, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Those 5 words were all the validation I needed. They were a shield against all of their venom. Preston, finally realizing this was spiraling into a legal and public relations nightmare, stepped forward with a placating smile that didn't reach his eyes. He lowered his voice. "Lori, be reasonable. I'm sure we can resolve this. What if we could help with Audrey's college fund? A generous contribution, say $50,000, to put this whole unfortunate incident behind us." I stared at him, my disbelief turning to pure disgust. "Are you trying to bribe me to ignore the assault of my child?" I asked, my voice loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. He blanched. Just then, through the large glass doors, I saw the flashing red and blue lights of a police car pulling up to the entrance. The party was officially over. If you are still listening, please help me by liking the video and commenting the number 1 below, so I know that you've given me a like, and I understand that you're with me on this journey. Your support is a tremendous encouragement for me. Please comment the number 1, and listen as I continue my story. The arrival of 2 uniformed officers shifted the atmosphere from chaotic family drama to a serious, formal investigation. The remaining guests, who had been hovering like vultures, parted like the Red Sea as the officers made their way through the ballroom, guided by a nervous-looking security guard. The first officer, a woman in her 40s with a calm demeanor and a name tag that read Lopez, came directly to us. "Ma'am, I understand you reported an assault on a minor," she said, her voice professional but not unkind. "Yes," I confirmed, my arm still protectively around Audrey's shoulders. "My daughter Audrey was slapped by my sister, Brenda Williams, after accidentally spilling a drink on her." Officer Lopez knelt down to Audrey's level, her expression softening. "Hi there, Audrey. My name is Officer Lopez. Would it be okay if I took a look at your face?" Audrey, who hadn't spoken a word since the slap, nodded silently. She turned her cheek to show the still visible, angry red handprint. The officer examined it without touching, her face unreadable. Then she took out her official police department phone. "Would it be all right if I take a picture of this? It will help us document what happened." I nodded, and she took several clear photos from different angles. As I recounted the incident in detail to Officer Lopez while her partner took notes, a clear, firm voice spoke up from behind us. "I have video of the aftermath." It was Diane Sterling, Preston's aunt. She stepped forward, her face set with a look of grim determination, her phone in her hand. "I started recording when I saw the confrontation escalating," she said, addressing the officers. "I wasn't fast enough to catch the slap itself, but I captured everything that came after. All the threats made against Lori and her daughter." "Threats?" the second officer asked sharply. "Yes," Diane confirmed, her voice ringing with authority. "Threats to her employment. Suggestions that the family would cut her off financially. Implications that the Caldwell family's connections would be used to make trouble for her. And a direct threat regarding the custody of her child. I'd be happy to provide my contact information and send you the video file." While the officers collected Diane's information, my family's demeanor underwent a miraculous transformation. When Officer Lopez approached their group, Brenda's rage morphed into tearful, victimized distress. "Officer, there's been a terrible misunderstanding," she began, her voice catching dramatically. "I would never intentionally hurt my niece. It was just a reflexive reaction." My mother jumped in, her voice shrill. "It was barely a tap. Children these days are so sensitive. In our day, a little discipline was normal and expected." Officer Lopez's response was flat and utterly unimpressed. "Ma'am, hitting a child hard enough to leave a visible mark that is still there almost 20 minutes later isn't discipline. It's assault. And as I understand it, the child isn't even your daughter to discipline." My father tried a different tactic, the affable, reasonable patriarch. "Officers, surely we can handle this as a family matter. My oldest daughter, she tends to overreact." "Sir," Officer Lopez said, her patience clearly wearing thin, "when we receive a report of assault on a minor, we are obligated by law to investigate it fully. This isn't something we can just ignore." After speaking with multiple witnesses who confirmed my story and after viewing a portion of Diane's damning video, Officer Lopez returned. She was holding a citation pad. She calmly wrote out a ticket and handed it to a stunned Brenda. "Ms. Williams, you are being issued a citation for simple assault on a minor. This is a misdemeanor offense," she explained coolly. "You'll need to appear in court on the date listed on this document." "You've ruined everything," Brenda spat at me as the officer handed her the paper, her voice a low, venomous hiss. "I hope you're satisfied." "No, Brenda," I replied calmly, looking her straight in the eye. My heart was aching for the sister I once had, but my resolve was like steel. "I'm not satisfied. I'm heartbroken that my sister would hurt my child, and that our parents would stand by and defend that behavior. But I am at peace with my decision to protect Audrey, even if it costs me my relationship with all of you." We then walked out of that country club, past the stunned faces and whispered conversations, and for the first time, I didn't care what any of them thought. The drive home was quiet. Audrey fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the trauma. I drove on autopilot, the events of the night replaying in my head. It wasn't until I was tucking her into her own bed, seeing the faint bruising starting to form on her cheek in the soft glow of her nightlight, that I finally allowed myself to cry. The days that followed were a blur. By Sunday morning, one of the guests had posted their video of the incident online. It wasn't the slap itself, but the ugly aftermath: Brenda's shrieking, my father's accusations, my mother's dismissal of Audrey's pain, and finally, my calm, clear call to 911. It went viral locally, then regionally. The story was picked up by local news blogs. My phone didn't stop ringing. News outlets, distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years, and even parents from my school calling to check on Audrey. I kept Audrey home from school for a couple of days, just to create a protective bubble around us. We watched movies, we baked cookies, we built a giant Lego castle. I just wanted her to feel safe. The consequences for Brenda were swift and public. On Tuesday, an article was published online: local marketing executive on leave after viral video shows altercation with niece. Her company's family-friendly brand couldn't be associated with an executive striking a child. My mother left me a furious, tearful voicemail. Her career, her entire future, may be ruined because you couldn't handle a family matter privately. I hope you're satisfied with yourself, Lori. I listened to the message, felt a pang of something that might have been sadness, and then deleted it. My biggest worry, however, was my own job. My father's threat had chilled me to the bone. I was terrified the powerful Caldwell family would use their influence to come after my teaching license. I walked into school on Wednesday morning with my stomach in knots, expecting to be called into the principal's office and fired. I was called in. But my principal, Dr. Washington, a stern but fair woman I deeply respected, motioned for me to close the door. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "Lori, I want you to know the school district fully supports you. We have received a few calls from people claiming to be concerned citizens, but we recognize an attempted intimidation campaign when we see one. You did exactly what we train our staff to do: you reported suspected child abuse. Your job is safe here." I burst into tears right there in her office, a flood of relief so powerful it made my knees weak. Then came an email from Diane Sterling. She checked on us, praised my courage, and then dropped a bombshell: Preston had postponed the wedding indefinitely. It turned out, that wasn't the end of it. 6 weeks after the incident, Preston himself emailed me. It was short and to the point. He had ended the relationship with Brenda for good. He wrote, "The incident with Audrey forced me to recognize patterns of anger and entitlement I had been ignoring for too long. I wish you and your daughter nothing but the best." With the support of a wonderful lawyer from a legal aid society, we filed for a temporary restraining order. My parents' attorney sent a threatening letter, full of legal jargon about parental alienation and the importance of family bonds, but my lawyer just laughed. "It's classic intimidation, Lori. They have no case." In court, the judge, a woman with kind but no-nonsense eyes, reviewed the police report, the photos of Audrey's face, and a copy of Diane's video. He granted a 1-year restraining order without hesitation. The legal fight was over. We were safe. Winning in court was one thing, healing our hearts was another journey entirely. I started taking both Audrey and myself to see a therapist, a gentle, wise woman named Dr. Bennett. For Audrey, therapy was a place to process her confusion and fear through play and art. She drew pictures of our family, sometimes with a big, stormy cloud hanging over Aunt Brenda and her grandparents. Dr. Bennett assured me, "Children are incredibly resilient, Lori, when they have a secure attachment to at least one caring adult who consistently puts their well-being first. Audrey knows, without question, that you will protect her. And that security is powerful medicine." For me, therapy was harder. It meant unraveling decades of my family's toxic dynamics, of learning that my worth wasn't tied to their approval. "You didn't break up your family, Lori," Dr. Bennett would remind me gently during our sessions. "You set a boundary against harmful behavior. They chose not to respect that boundary. There's a significant difference." It took a long time for that to sink in. Brenda, as part of her plea deal to avoid more serious charges, had to complete a 6-month anger management program and perform community service. 3 months after the party, a letter arrived with Brenda's neat, perfect handwriting on the envelope. My hand trembled as I opened it. I was expecting excuses, blame, a plea for me to drop the restraining order. But it was none of those things. "I am writing to acknowledge that my behavior toward Audrey was inexcusable," she wrote. "No child deserves to be struck, regardless of the circumstances. I began this therapy just to satisfy the legal requirements, but it has forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. I am not asking for forgiveness. I simply wanted you to know that I am working to become someone who would never again react with violence." There were no excuses. There was just accountability. It was the first honest thing she had said to me in years. My parents' journey was slower, more painful. After our pastor, a man they deeply respected, had a long talk with them about the difference between old-fashioned parenting and abuse, my mother called me. Her voice was stiff and awkward. "Your father and we miss seeing Audrey." It was a start. I told her that if they were serious about rebuilding a relationship, they had to be willing to meet with Audrey's therapist first, to learn how to move forward appropriately. "Therapy?" my mother sighed, the disapproval clear in her voice. "Is that really necessary?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm, a newfound strength in it. "It's non-negotiable." To my utter shock, they eventually agreed. The first session was tense. But slowly, painstakingly, they began to listen. We started with short, supervised visits in a public park. It was awkward, but it was a start. For Audrey's birthday, they gave her a handmade card that simply said, "We love you and we want to be better grandparents." As the months passed, a new normal settled over our lives, one that felt healthier and more peaceful than anything I had ever known before. Our little apartment was no longer a fortress we needed to defend against criticism, but a warm, welcoming gathering spot for our new, chosen family. I reconnected with a cousin, Taylor, who had also distanced herself from the family years ago because of my parents' controlling behavior. She and her kids started coming over for playdates, filling our home with laughter. Diane Sterling became a dear friend and mentor, a source of unwavering support. We were building a new family, one chosen with care and built on a foundation of mutual respect. At school, I received an unexpected promotion to lead teacher for my grade level. In the announcement, my principal specifically cited my demonstrated commitment to the welfare and safety of children as a qualifying factor. It was a clear, public message of support, and it meant the world to me. But the most profound change was in Audrey. The timid child who constantly worried about embarrassing the adults in her life was gone. In her place was a confident, compassionate young girl who spoke up for classmates who were being teased and volunteered for leadership roles in class. The trauma hadn't broken her; in a strange way, it had shown her her own strength. One afternoon, she came home from school bursting with excitement about a class project on everyday heroes. "Mom, I'm writing about you," she announced as she unpacked her backpack. "My teacher said we should pick someone who shows courage in regular life, not like superheroes with special powers." Her resulting essay, titled "My Mom, My Hero," earned an A+. But more importantly, it showed me that she had processed the traumatic event and turned it into a narrative of protection and courage, not victimhood. She wrote, "My mom was brave because she stood up to bullies, even when the bullies were her own family." 6 months after that terrible night, Audrey suggested we create a new tradition. "Let's have a courage celebration," she proposed. Not to remember the bad parts, but to celebrate standing up for what's right, even when it's scary. We marked the occasion with a special dinner and small gifts symbolizing bravery. As we ate chocolate cake for dessert, she asked thoughtfully, "Do you think Aunt Brenda will ever be part of our family again?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know, sweetie. That would depend on many things. Her continuing to work on her anger, a genuine understanding of why what she did was wrong, and most importantly, your comfort and feelings about it. We don't have to decide that now, or maybe ever." She nodded, accepting the honest answer. "I think I might be okay with seeing her someday," she said. "But not yet. And only if you're there, too." And as I tucked her into bed that night, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. The constant, crushing weight of seeking approval from people who would never truly give it was gone. It had been replaced by the simple, powerful certainty that Audrey and I were enough, just as we were. We learned that true love should never hurt or diminish you. We learned that standing up for what's right might cost you relationships, but it will gain you self-respect. And most importantly, we learned that sometimes, the family you're born into isn't as healthy as the family you choose to build. I looked at my incredible, resilient daughter, sleeping peacefully, and I knew, without a single shred of doubt, that the family we were building was the strongest, truest family of all. Thank you for listening.